Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this animation right here. Now, this video does not assume that you know anything about Blender at all. I'm starting from the very beginning, talking about the interface and how to navigate around it a little bit, and then I start animating. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphan Last, aka Skylar Madison, and today I'm going to be talking about Blender 2.8. As you can see right here, this is the release candidate. So everything that they're doing with Blender is pretty much in place right now in the 2.8 release candidate. Okay, this is Blender 2.8. It's just getting a little bit more bug fixes. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking to you guys about how to animate inside of Blender 2.8. You can click on 2D animation right there where I clicked in order to create a new 2D animation, or you can go File, New, 2D Animation, and that's what I normally do, to be honest. When you do that, you get this right here, right in front of you, and my audience is new to Blender, and so it's important that I go ahead and kind of describe a few things real quick. Now, you can do frame-by-frame animation. As you can see, we're in the Draw menu, Object Mode, Edit Mode, Sculpt Mode, Draw Mode, and Weight Paint. Now, each one of these gives you different options in the sidebars. Just generally, the behaviors and the things that you do in each mode is different. For example, you're not going to be doing any animating inside of the Draw persona or Draw mode. You're going to be drawing a lot. But you could do a lot of frame-by-frame animation. As you can see, I'm just using the arrow key, and I'm just flipping to the next frame. Here's the timeline down here, and I'm just drawing out this line that's kind of animated, and we could go ahead and just play the animation down here. And yeah, frame-by-frame animation definitely works inside of Blender 2.8. So let me go File, New, 2D Animation, and discard those changes. Now, there's a few things that you need to be aware of when you're drawing inside of Blender 2.8. Let me go ahead and just draw out some sort of line. Now, if I were to press spacebar, for me, it brings up a search menu. For you, it would wind up playing your animation if you haven't changed any of the settings inside of Blender, okay? So for me, when I want to play my animation, I press Shift Space, and as you can see, the timeline cursor is just moving along here, and if I press Shift Space again, it stops playing. Now for you, it's just going to be spacebar to play it, spacebar to stop playing it. Now there's something that you should see here. Now, if you notice on frame 250, the animation ends. Let me just go ahead and just play the animation for you really quick here, and you'll be able to see that it winds up looping. Even though there's not really an animation that I've created at this point, it winds up starting all the way back at frame 1 at frame 250, okay? So how you can fix that, if you notice right next to this little clock here, you can change the start position so that you can view the animation at frame 100, and at the end section you can go ahead and have it stop playing at frame 381, okay? And if you use a scroll wheel while your cursor is inside of the timeline, you're able to zoom in and zoom out of the timeline. So I'm going to press Shift Space for me, spacebar for you probably, and you can see that it started at frame 100 and now it's going to stop playing at 381, which is pretty cool. There are uses for this. So let me go ahead and set this to 1 and set the end to 250 just because, okay? And let me go ahead and just zoom on in. You can also grab the scroll bar at the corner in order to zoom in as well and to zoom out, which is kind of nifty. There's these little handles on the scroll wheel here that you can see here that help you zoom in and out. Alright, so to navigate. Now, if I have my cursor inside of the canvas area, okay, that's at least what I'm calling it. If I zoom out, I can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out, okay, which is pretty cool, okay? So you need to press middle click and shift in order to pan around your scene. You need to click on your mouse wheel and press shift and hold them down in order to pan around your scene, which is pretty handy. Now, if you just middle click on your mouse, what's going to happen is you're going to start seeing a three-dimensional view of your scene, which is kind of cool. This is something that can really help you out if you're doing 2.5D or mixing a combination of 2D and 3D together. Really, really helpful. Now, if you press 1, you can get a point of view where you're able to see where your camera is on the scene, but if you press 0, you get the view from the camera. If you press 0 again, you can see the camera again. You don't necessarily want that. When you're working, you just kind of want to see what the camera sees and maybe animate the camera as you go along. I'm not going to get that far into it. I'm not going to be talking about how to animate the camera or anything, but those are ultimately the two keys that you need to find out. Now, when I say 0, I'm talking about the numpad. If you don't have a numpad, I'm not really quite sure how I can help you out there, but the numpad is something that you're going to be using quite a bit when you're using Blender. Now, if you press 3, you get a side view of what's going on inside of your scene. So here, let me show you what I mean. If I start kind of scrolling around here, we can see how my previous line, which is onion skinned, is in relationship to the line that I just drew when I pressed 3. So this is 3, this is 1, or 0. So that's kind of cool. You're able to kind of construct a three-dimensional object even. You can kind of do some cool stuff with this. And if you press 7, you get a top view. Let me show you. Top. So 1 or 0, 3, 7. From the 0 point of view, this is where it says top right here. That's this line right here. It's only until we start kind of panning that we can actually see how all of this is kind of coming together. And it looks as though, like, if I were to go into edit mode and select this, you'll notice that there's this 3D cursor that's right here, and that is determining where you're going to be drawing in the three-dimensional scene. So we are drawing on a flat surface on any direction of this 3D cursor. All right, it's weird. It's something that I'm wanting to kind of play with a little bit, but these are just little things that I want you to kind of play with as you get familiar with Blender, its interface, and how drawing works. It's only through playing with the program that you start to kind of figure out its quirks. So I'm going to go File, New, 2D Animation, Discard. So we're going to be talking about how to make a bouncing ball inside of Blender 2.8. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep this simple. I'm in the draw persona, and you'll notice that we have a number of tools here. Now, for a ball that's just bouncing, I'm just going to just create a circle using this circle tool down here. And after you click and drag holding shift, you'll notice that it has these 2 yellow dots and a red dot in the center. You know, normally it doesn't really create a keyframe, but it did in this case. I'm not really quite sure why. But if you press enter, you should wind up with what you need. I mean, it should be finished there. And so, you know, I zoomed out, and I don't really like it so much, exactly the size and stuff, so I'm going to go into edit mode, select this, and you'll see that only one vertex is selected. So what we need to do is we need to press L, and that will select this line and only this line, okay? And if I press G, I grabbed it, and then I left click. If I press S, that scales it, and then left click. Okay, so that worked out pretty well. Let me grab it one more time and place it right there. Okay, that's cool. So I'm going to press Control C to copy this, and then go to frame 20 and press Control V. Alright, and now I'm just going to press G to grab it, and I'm just going to move it on down. And that looks pretty good. And now maybe I want to go to 3 frames ahead, okay? And so I can go to this little area to the left of this clock right here. This clock to the left of it. I can click here, and since I'm on frame 20, I can press +3 frames, okay? And press enter, and now we're on frame 23. So we don't always have to kind of click, drag, and kind of guess what frame we're on. You see exactly what frame we're on, what frame the animation starts at, and what frame the animation ends at. And we can change that at any point in time. Alright, so now that we have that accomplished, we're still in edit mode, so this will work. I press Control V once again. I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to move it just ever so slightly underneath what I have already placed there. And I'm going to go into Sculpt mode. Now, Sculpt mode is kind of cool because we're able to kind of just push this object around, and you don't want these vertices to get too crazy. You don't want them to get separated too much. You want them to be pretty close together, otherwise it starts to look kind of blocked. And if it gets to being a little bit gnarly, like how it's looking right now, you can use this smooth tool right here, and you can kind of get the line to kind of relax a little bit, which is kind of helpful. And I'm just going to continue to kind of push this thing around, and that looks pretty good. Now I want to go back to edit mode, and I want to go to the immediate frame after this one. We're on frame 23, so +1 down here, and I'm going to press Control V once again, and we now have this object up here. I'm going to grab it and drag it on down here, and I'm going to move it so that there's some overlap, but it's ever so slight. And now I'm going to go to, since it took 20 frames for it to reach the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen, I'm going to say it's going to be another 20 frames. So we did this at frame 24. If I go here and go +20, frame 44. Awesome. Now we're still in edit mode. I'm going to press Control V, and it's already in the position that I needed it, which is awesome. So now what we need to do is we need to start interpolating this. So what we need to do in order to interpolate is we need to go to frame 1 first, and in edit mode, make sure you're in edit mode. You need to select the line and then press L, and then we need to go to frame 20, select the line, and then press L with both of these. You select it, you'll have one vertice selected, and then press L on both of these. Then you want your cursor on your timeline to be somewhere in this in-betweening range. Otherwise, you're going to wind up running into an error, okay? Let me show you what happens. So if I select both of these frames, frame 1 and frame 20, what happens is this. If I put this on frame 1, okay, you can see the cursor's on frame 1, and interpolate. Now, what I want you to do right now is select interpolate, selected lines, okay? But if the cursor is on frame number 1 and I say interpolate sequence, cannot interpolate as current frame already has existing grease pencil frames. Okay, so you need to have your cursor somewhere in the middle here. So here's something that's kind of cool. You can go ahead and click interpolate and kind of drag it. Now this is kind of handy because when your cursor is on an exact frame that you want to have as a breakdown of some sort, in order to kind of get an idea of what your spacing should be, you can really just decide, okay, well, I want it to kind of go really slow here, so maybe I want it to still be up here from frame 1 to frame 11. And you can go interpolate once again if you want and decide, okay, it's going to be in this position, okay? Kind of cool. But I'm not going to try to manually work out my spacing. It is faster to do it that way than trying to do it frame by frame. It is. However, just for a bouncing ball, I don't think it's really that necessary. So I'm going to go interpolate, and I'm going to go to type here. Now this will determine the spacing automatically. So what you need to know is here in this left corner, that represents your first keyframe that's currently selected. And then this upper right corner, it's the second keyframe that's currently selected, closer to the end of your animation. This is your first keyframe right here. This right here is your second keyframe. Now, if I were to go something like this, what happens is the flatter your line is, the slower your animation is going to be. The more vertical this line is, the faster it's going to be. So if I want to go like this, then it's going to be really fast and then it's going to slow down, okay? So if you think about it, a bouncing ball, it would start out with very little momentum and then it gained momentum. So I'm going to go something like that. That looks good, and I'm going to click on sequence up here, okay? And as you can see, it's gone ahead and created all of these in-betweens. Now, I want to kind of show you some things here because the terminology is different than what I'm used to, at least. Let me zoom in on my keyframes here. If I select this keyframe here and I press R, okay, on the keyboard, we have keyframe, breakdown, moving hold, extreme, and jitter. Now, a keyframe and an extreme are pretty much the exact same thing. And basically, breakdown is kind of the wrong term, at least for what I understand, because it's gone ahead and created all of these as breakdowns. So let me show you what I mean. If I press R once again and click extreme, you can see that it transformed this keyframe into an extreme. The icon for it here on the timeline is different. So we can do that with all of these if we want. Press R, extreme. We can see that they've all changed. And these are all breakdowns, okay? Breakdowns. There's no icon for something like in between. It's just breakdown. So what I'm thinking the terminology for Blender is an extreme is a keyframe, at least as I understand it. And a keyframe would basically be a breakdown, and then a breakdown is an in-between. And a jitter is just something where you want to make some sort of special notation on your timeline or something to kind of bring attention. This is different. Maybe this is what you would be doing if you were doing things frame by frame with jitter. I don't know. I'm trying to think how I personally would use this. So now that we've got all of these breakdowns, let's go ahead and just kind of scrub through our animation. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Let's press space bar for you, shift space for me. Okay, that's kind of cool. Other than it disappearing there for a second and teleporting, it turned out looking pretty good. Let me change the end of this. Let me just kind of click and drag on the end of the animation here in order for me to have it just loop within the region that I actually need it at. Okay, so just playing it through a few times, and it looks like it's going to really work out. Okay, so now let's go ahead and select these two keyframes, put our cursor inside of the breakdown region, okay, and interpolate, and I figure it would probably have a lot of momentum and then have to work its momentum up to bouncing this thing up, the ball into the air. So I'm going to click sequence, and let's go ahead and play the animation. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, now we're going to go to frame 25, select its keyframe, and on frame 45, we're going to select its keyframe, and it would start out with a lot of momentum at the beginning because all of the buildup for its momentum is within this little moment where it squishes. Okay, so let me go sequence. Oh, I see what's going on. That's wrong. I need to go to frame 24, select this, press L, and okay, so frame 44 is working. So the lines are selected, and now I got the keyframes selected as well, or extremes selected, and now I need to click sequence. Okay, so let's take a look at it and see how this animation is looking. Wow, maybe a little bit too fast. It looks like it's just kind of almost teleporting. Yeah, it's just straight up teleporting from here to here. I don't like that. So I'm going to change the interpolation. I'm going to select frame 19 all the way to frame 2 and delete that. Delete keyframe. Alright? And now, let me go to frame 1, make sure that the line is selected. Frame 20, the line is selected. Select these two extremes or keyframes, whatever you want to call them. And, okay, it's going to start out slow and speed up. Alright? Now, shift space. Okay, so right now it looks pretty good. But we can kind of do some tricks with it that we've kind of learned from traditional animation. We can decide, okay, this is the beginning of where it starts to start moving really fast. So let's go into sculpt mode and select this push tool and just kind of stretch it out a bit. And let's try to stretch this out a little bit more. And this one, let's go ahead and stretch it out even more. Awesome. Okay, so now let's take a look at the animation. It's looking pretty good. I like it. Okay, so now this frame right here. Now, I don't know how to get the onion skins to kind of start appearing at this point. They were showing up earlier, but now they're not. But what I do know is I want to kind of stretch this out a bit, and I'm just kind of gonna scrub through these two frames to kind of get an idea as to what's up. And I think this one would be stretched out quite significantly as well. You know, actually, it almost looks as though at the beginning of the animation right here, I feel as though this should actually get thinner. If it's stretching out, it needs to keep its mass. So this is stretching out even more. Just kind of playing around with it a bit. Awesome. Okay, so I feel as though I've played around with this quite a bit. And press shift space, and we can see the bouncing ball in all its glory. And I think that's pretty sleek. I think that's pretty cool. And if it wasn't for the fact that I'm narrating every step that I'm going through and just kind of like beginner's introductions to Blender and all of that, I could have actually done this extremely quickly. I'm very happy with the result. So I know that animating a bouncing ball isn't the most profound thing in the world. However, if you can animate a bouncing ball, then you've reached this point to where you're able to reach the first step into creating a great animation, okay? A bouncing ball is the first step to learning animation, so this is the best way to introduce all of this to you. I've been thinking about it, and I'm halfway thinking that I should probably start over with the 51 animation challenges with Blender. I know that there's a number of you guys that have been following me because of OpenToons, and I love OpenToons. It's the thing that actually showed me that I can indeed animate. But I'm kind of burnt out on OpenToons, and I feel as though an entire speed paint video of me animating my in-betweens, it doesn't make any sense inside of OpenToons, whereas inside of Blender, this would be a lot easier to follow. And so that's some of the main motivators for me wanting to move over to Blender, other than the fact that I think that Blender is amazing. So if you guys would like to see me start all the way over with the 51 animation challenges with Blender, feel free to participate in the poll that's appearing on the screen right now. And if you would just like to have something to say about this, me not really wanting to go back to using OpenToons, feel free to leave a comment. I would really like to have a conversation with you. It's hard for me to kind of predict the thought process of my audience, and so if you guys just want to talk about it, your perspective on me kind of leaving OpenToons behind, just talk to me. I would like to hear what your thoughts are and all of that good stuff. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell or go ahead and follow me on Twitter. A link is supplied in the video description below. If you'd like to support my channel, there's a picture of my mascot in the upper right corner of the screen right now. Any support is much appreciated. And with Patreon, I go ahead and supply some extra features for you for a very low price. And if you'd like to see more of my content, feel free to click on anything that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.